So what's going on here? You can see that there's some pings already here and some noise there. And let's go to perspective camera, and maybe we can better see what I'm talking about. Currently, there's no fireflies, and the reason for that is everything is kind of good. But let's say this surface here, if I can't select it, I can't. Where's the light? There we go. So this is now the light surface. And depending how close it is to your object and how bright it is initially, or if you have some intersections, obviously I'm just trying to reproduce the fireflies. So if I zoom out now, and just for the sake of it, I hide the other lights and I increase the intensity of this one. Let's go up to 10. Weird thing is I can't see any fireflies. I just tested it before and I got loads of them. Maybe it's the settings. Or do I have the filter? No. That's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Okay. Weird. Let's just try it again by increasing the value a bit more. Because sometimes you have really big lights and you want to, they are very far away from your scene, but you need to, but they need to light up your scene still, but they're very far away, and then you have a very close object to that. So let's just try to do it a bit different. I just move this guy up and light it down, like so. And then I create a sphere. Which does not snap. Yeah, I think there we see them now. Well, that gets already cleaned up quite good, but you can see now in the render that you see these pings everywhere. And the reason for that is that the object is very close to the light. And if I bring it even closer, sorry, it's a bit of a hassle to navigate on this small screen here. Alright, let's see what we get now. There we go. So now you can see this is typical fireflies. And you can't really do anything really to clean it up. So if you think, okay, I see this noise, how do I get rid of it? Yeah, it might be direct because it's directly hitting the surface. Let's increase the AA samples, and even if you go up to 20, and it renders, it gets better definitely, but it won't get clean, and your render times go insanely high. All the rest is super clean, but you get these noises which you just cannot get rid of. So there are a few things to do to clean it up. So the first thing what you can do is you can clamp your sample values. And clamping means it's locking as the indirect passes or actually the rays to a certain value. So if you clamp them to 1, you can see the noise, you get kind of rid of the noise coming from 10 to 1, from 10, there we go, that's the original one, and then going back to 1. But you will also clamp sun values and all the other values. You can see this one gets rid of. So this is not ideal. So what can you do instead? So there's another thing which is a cool trick which you can use. You can create a light filter onto your lights. So if you have the area light on the top here, this guy, and you go to your area light, and you go to light filters and you click add, and then there should be a pop-up, and you would select the light decay, which is like a fall of um, from the distance of the light. So I created that now. Nothing did change because it's on default disabled. Double clicking the list will open the light decay. So what you want to do is you want to reduce the intensity of the light in the near field. So if I enable that and I say the distance is maybe 10, and then the start is maybe 5. Let's see if it does work. Currently not yet. You should see a better or cleaner image actually. There we go. So you can see now, increasing the near field, you get rid of the noise because the intensity of the light close to the surface gets reduced, and you get rid of the noise. So let's dial this a bit more, and you can see it's getting almost clean now. From here to here, it's a big difference, and all I did was adding this little light filter in front of the light, and all the rest is looking the same, but you got rid of the noise. So this is one very good trick to do. And the other thing is obviously just move the object further away from the high intensity light source. So if I just move this one down again and to the side maybe, so it's, or actually if I just change the surface color, not like a perfect white, then already you don't get these white bounces back, but you can see already it's now placed away from the light source and you don't get fireflies. Bringing it back closer, you get those fireflies again. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I still have the light filter on. Yeah, so these are the little tricks for fireflies. I did not want, oh well, I just have 3 lights now. So, and the next thing I want to show you is volume noise. And volume noise can only be controlled, so in, with the settings in the volume scattering node, these samples here. So in most cases, you render the volume pass in a separate render pass and then a comp added on top of your main render. And I will show you quickly how it does look like if I bring back the trees. There we go. I save and I start the render. Alright, this is now my scene with my 3 area lights and volume scattering enabled. Ideally, this will be a separate pass and it will be comped over. So if I render perspective, you can see how it looks like from the distance. You can see all the trees in the scene, and you can see what's going on here. So this is what it currently looks like, and if I just for the tutorial's sake increase the density of that scattering node, let's say to 0.5, there we go. This is now all the scattering noise. Okay, so that is that. You see you can also get some fireflies. So it is on default pretty clean already, but there are a few tricks which help you to optimize that. So if you're on a separate render pass, you would create overrides. So what I tend to do is just disable indirects completely, like this. No indirect noise. And then even the camera rays, you can keep them pretty low, like let's say 3 actually. And then also what you want to do is you don't want to have any shaders in the scene. So you either assign a black concentrator, which does not contribute to anything and which is super fast to evaluate, or what you can also do is just I think disabling textures should work in the diagnostics tab. If you ignore shaders and textures, and let's just ignore atmosphere. Yeah, that's also a thing you can do. So this is now lights. Alright, so what you can do is just, if you ignore textures and shaders, then you get also a super fast render, and you can see it's very fast now. And if I go up to let's say 150 resolution, you can see it is super clean already with not doing anything. So it might be that you want to make this even faster, by reducing the samples. So if I go back to 1, you can see now that you introduce some noise in this. So the only way to control the noise is by this setting in the scattering node, and the AA samples don't really do anything about it. It's still noisy, and the AA samples here will mostly control it. So if you have, let's say, 5, and you still see some noise, you would increase this to 5 as well, or 6, or 7, or 8, and then you should be fine. And the other way to control it is in the lights itself. And where is a light? There we go. So the other thing you can do is control the volume. Oh wait, let me double check quickly. It is actually not on the light. These volume samples correspond to VDB samples, and they don't affect this at all. This is a bit confusing. Oh no, I'm actually mistaken. It might be that it was that, and now they combined them, because previously I think this volume samples was only for VDBs, and now it's also linked to the scattering node. So this as well, if you have a light which you know is noisy, you can increase the samples on that specific light as well. And this is the contribution, the total contribution of that single light. So if you have a light source which you want to have more visible in the volumes, you can just slide these to this value here. So that is that for volume scattering. And let's just bring back those settings. So if I hide these, bring back my dome light. And I think we were on 3, like so. So the next thing I want to do is to show you how it looks like with motion blur enabled, which in most production renders you have enabled. So if I go to my globals and I enable motion blur, like this, and the keys is also important. If you have like fast rotations and like, I don't know, spinning wheels for instance, the keys is very important. And for linear movements 2 is fine, but rotational ones you need to want to go higher, maybe 4 or 5. But in this case, this is totally fine. And let's start up the render again and check the noise and the settings for that. So alright, as you can see, motion blur is enabled and render times go really up now. You can see there's still noise in the indirects and diffuses, and you can see there's lots of noise in the motion blur pass, or in the motion blur itself, not a pass. So how do you get rid of that? So the only way to do this is increasing AA samples, and I'll just render this progressively now. And the first thing I want to show you is how I would approach it if I know the shot is rendered in motion blur. I again disable the samples, and so I just have the AA samples to play with. So, and to do that, you can see now how it looks like this. And the next step is, let's just go to increase those samples, and first increase the resolution now to be 100%, because you want to check motion blur samples in your final render settings, because it tends that the AA samples are a bit different depending on the resolution. Not always, but sometimes. So let's try 8 AA samples. Let's see how that looks like. Okay, it's getting there. It's definitely cleaner now. You can see that these noise patterns got smaller. Obviously render times go up, but it is getting cleaner, and you can see those streaks are now pretty nice. And let's say if I go up to 10, maybe before it starts. Okay, shit, I wanted to store it. Let's just store it just now. But you see, this is now where rendering times get expensive. If you have motion blur and you want it to be clean, like if you want to see it on, I don't know, 4K renders and it needs to be clean, this is where you got high render times. And for small renders like what I'm using here, 1960 by 540, this is totally fine and acceptable. And I think final render settings, it would maybe render 40 minutes this frame on this quality. But let's just store this and go back to the original 5 AA samples, just that you see what is actually happening. And this is the original one. You can see that these streaks of light are very broken up with noise. and this is now the difference. So you can see it's only changing A samples, and it is getting pretty clean now. So now let's say you like the setting of 12, and previously we had diffuse and glossy samples to 3. So you say, yeah, they were clean before, so why should I bother changing those values now? The big problem is that these values are squared, so it's 9, and this is 9, and this is squared as well, so it's 12 times 12, which is 144, and 144 times 3 squared, which is 9, so 144 times 9, this is the actual samples for the diffuse samples, which is crazy. And before on 5, you can see this is actually the value. So 1296 is what we have now for diffuse samples, and before we had 225. So if you think not changing those values if you go higher is very, very wrong. So it was clean with 225 samples. So we should try to stay at 225, and by increasing A samples, these values change. So keep that in mind. It's very important. So if I go back to 12, it's 1296 now. So I want to try to go as low as possible, which is 1 in this case. And if I go to 1, we get 144 sam, which is lower than 255, but it is okay. If I go up to 2, you get like double of 255, which is too much. So let's just rather go down to 1, and also for the glossy ones. So now we have very high A samples and very low diffuse and glossy samples. And this should actually help give us a cleaner render, and as well cleaner AOVs for diffuse and glossy. And the other thing which you need to keep in mind is now your light settings. The light samples as well are multiplied by the A samples. So checking the environment light, which is now on 3, which is also in terms 9, and so it is as well very high. It was 255 before on 5A samples, but now it is what was it, 1296? So this is also going too crazy. So you can for you shouldn't go on 1 maybe, because for diffuse 1 is 144 samples is a bit low, but if you go to 2, you get 512 samples for this, and this should be actually pretty good. So I will now update, and I will now, because because I am now on a higher resolution, I will change my bucket size to let's say 32 for now, and I will refresh the whole scene, and I will render portions after it is retranslated. Alright, so this is now motion blur enabled, and this is my 1960 resolution render. So let's just see how the noise looks in let's check this area here, because it was noisy before, and I just want to see how it looks now. Also, just keep that in mind. The default setting for the Arnold render view is that it saves 1 thread for UI things. So currently I've got 8 threads, and I'm saving 1 for the UI. So this is why I've got 7 buckets rendering here. And if you want to use all your threads, you just need to change this to 0. So you can see I still have noise in the direct ones, and you can see that this is pretty noisy still. And the direct is pretty clean, the direct spec, which is good. So the A samples for that are good enough, so we don't need to go higher on that. And the direct spec is also, let's just check this area here, and let's change it to progressive again. And the direct spec 2-pass looks as if it's also clean. Yes, it looks very neat. So let's check indirects. Let's see at the bottom here. At the bottom, you can already see that in the indirect diffuse is still too noisy for final settings. Definitely, it is too noisy. So the only thing you can do is increasing that setting. So let's increase it to 2. So we've got now 512 samples for the, or 576 for the diffuse. It takes longer, but it should get better. There you go. It's a big improvement already. I think which is for now good enough. And then if you check the indirect spec on this guy here, let's see how that looks. Okay, the indirect look actually pretty good because I'm zoomed in by almost 200%. You can see some noises, but the indirect is fine. So we can go 12 to 1. And then what else is there to do? I want to render this just to show you how it currently looks like. It will. I also have depth of field like prepared, but it's actually the same thing as motion blur, just that depth of field is a bit more sensitive. So keep that in mind. And if you want to render depth of field, you need to sometimes go up to 16 samples, and then just be sure to keep those two on everything on 1. If you go higher than 12, most of the times, like 14.1.1 is a good setting for final stuff. Right, so I will render now the image, and I'll just get back to you after it's done. Alright, after 14 minutes now with these settings, I can see that the indirects are still not clean, so the next step would be to just increase the indirect samples. So for this indirect spec, you can see it's still not there and it's very noisy. So you can now either increase this value, maybe 2 or 3. You can try that. I can try 3. And I will also change the bucket size again just to be smaller, just for faster iterations. And I will render now just this portion here of the metal ball there. And so this is more or less the technique. So just be sure, or just to understand that the AA samples is multiplying all the other samples as well. So it is very important to keep that in mind when changing values, and don't go too crazy. Now we have already 1296 for the glossy rays, but you can see now this did definitely clean it up coming from here to here. This is a big jump. And so this is what it takes to clean up your renders, this is what you have to do. And some shaders have extra samples in their settings, like the AL surface shader. You can increase the glossy samples only for that lobe, which you can do, which is based on assigned materials, assigned objects. So it might be worth it if you try that. So this is now pretty clean with 3 glossy and 12 AA. And keep in mind, we render everything with motion blur, so that is also a thing to consider. All in all, I hope you do understand now the techniques and everything which is involved to create good, clean-looking renders. And always keep in mind about your render times and especially your AA samples. This is a global factor, and these are specific samples per array type. So this is all the stuff there is to it actually, and it's not too crazy. I would still encourage you guys to read through these links here, how to remove noise, what noise does exist, how to clean that up. It is very informative, and you can see the final settings for this simple image was 16.1.2.1.1, and I'm currently rendering with 12. So we could definitely go up higher, but this is more or less what it takes. So what else is there? If you want to, again, support me, I'm on Patreon. Become a patron and support me with that. Also, check out the app I have written for the iOS store, which is a material database, which is still in the early footsteps. So I am working on that. I'm trying to migrate all the database from locally to the cloud, so I don't need to go to the app review process to update the database. So that is where I'm working on right now. And yes, always try to support me by subscribing, by liking my videos, by giving feedback, leaving comments, ask questions. I'm open for anything. I try to help when I think it is worth helping out. Sometimes I get lots of not so informative and helpful questions or remarks, so then I tend to ignore them. But yeah, this is my video on how to optimize your render settings and how to get the best and quickest results possible. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a great day. Bye.